describing,
well,
I'm not sure what.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you stepping outside of what appears to me your comfort zone, because you're speaking very clearly that you don't consider yourself an expert in this. And I actually think that's important. I think it's important that we don't just wait around for the experts to tell us what's so, because to me, the qualifying element is you identify yourself as a man. So I think you have just as much right as any one of us to speak about your beliefs on what that is. And a lot of what you shared in there, I think, is really, really important, because it reflects a particular way of looking at what this looks like. I know for me, one of the big inspirations for me to start this podcast was really questioning, well, what does it mean to be a man? And finding out that I had to define that for myself. And so, I always find that asking that question of someone else tells me how you have come to define that for you. And going back to that idea of toxic masculine, how does that land with you as a guy who doesn't really spend a lot of time talking about that, but hears that in the space? What is your viewpoint on toxic masculinity and the fact that that's being spoken about?
I think it's great, because I think there is such a thing as toxic masculinity, but it ultimately all comes from some deeper inherent imbalance. And by shaming the toxic masculine, it doesn't actually heal the wound. It just reshapes it. So it's like, okay, don't do that because I want to get more likes. But then you typically will get more likes if you do the toxic masculine thing, whatever it is. You've got like abs beside a Ferrari or something like that. So that's kind of the irony is culture wants it. You know, it's like when you go into places like if you go into like the South, where there's a lot of racism, there's a lot of white guys watching black dudes bang whatever. And it's like, oh, interesting. That thing that on the face, they're like, oh, it's the worst. No, keep it away. It doesn't it doesn't heal anything. It doesn't address anything. It just remedies topically. And then the inside, there's the same imbalance and the same instability and the same, dysfunction. Sure. It's just the face gets shifted. So you're never going to change anything through shame.
I think that's a really important part of the message too. And even just zooming out for a minute and maybe bringing this into the health and nutrition and fitness realm, it's looking at where we source our motivation from. I mean, how many people are motivating people out there in the Instagram, Facebook worlds by showing them pictures of what you said, guys with abs next to a Ferrari, and then they look down at themselves and say, wow, I am nowhere near that. I'm a piece of shit. I'm overweight. I'm sloppy. I'm unmotivated, and motivating from that place versus something else from a different source. What are your thoughts on that whole dynamic?
I think all you can do is do what feels true to you. So I'm not mad at, like, I was watching, I've started recently getting more into boxing. And so I spent the last week just watching videos of Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather and all these different people. And Floyd, his thing was, he really wanted to be famous and really wanted to be known as the best ever and all that stuff. And so he wanted to kind of as almost more of a PR stunt in a way. And it just resonates with him and feels true to him. He likes it. He would just be the bad guy and just being super superficial and all of the bling and the cars and the girls, and he just really wanted to go deep into that polarized side of toxic masculinity essentially, and that was his tool, and it worked really well for him. So I think your responsibility is only to be authentic to yourself, and allow whatever feels true to you to be at least accepted enough to express out. And then it's not necessarily going to stick. And if it does stick, cool, you probably found something that really is deeply meaningful to you. And the other stuff, by allowing it to express out, then it can get out of you essentially. And then you can move on to the next thing that comes out. It's I think it's like a train or a conveyor belt. Sure. And then the only responsibility for other people is to be responsible for themselves and the way that they feel about a thing. I think it's very inconsiderate and small-minded and selfish and I don't know, almost cute for someone to post a thing and you get mad about it and have to tell them how they shouldn't post that or something, because it's just an indication that you're out of control of your mind. So you're oh no, you can't do that. It's you're out of control, dog. Like if you walk, this is from Ram Dass, maybe Alan Watts, but if you're like walking through the woods, you know, and you see a bunch of trees, and the trees are, maybe one tree is shaped in like kind of a funny way, or, you know, it goes outside of your perception of what is appropriate for trees. There's never been a time that you've got mad at a tree. Like it's just one, because it's not in your mindset, it's not logical. But because because you're so separate from a tree, you just see it as like nature. Wow, it's great. Whatever nature does, great. But with people, I think because they're, you know, you feel more related to them, obviously, it feels like more congruent with you. When they're doing a certain thing, I think you see yourself in them, and then it becomes like, you know, this bind for you of sorts. But ultimately, we could respond to people the same way we would respond to trees. And the only thing that we absolutely have a responsibility around is the way that we respond. That's it. Yeah. It's no one's responsibility to be anything. It's only your responsibility to be in awareness or control of the way that you respond.
And I really appreciate that. I always lean on Bruce Lee's wisdom here. You probably have heard this one where he said, observe everything, take what's useful, and make it uniquely your own. And that was really his philosophy on life. That's how he came to evolve the martial arts world so much, and really set the tone for mixed martial arts and what we see nowadays. So that idea of observing everything, I think a lot of people get stuck in that first step where we're open to everything. We're taking everything in and only taking what's useful. I think that's the part that I hear you speaking to, is where I develop my filter for what's actually useful for me. What's further helping me shape my way of seeing the world and my way of seeing myself that helps me get further along, and rejecting the other pieces of it. I think like what you're talking about with people who are trolling on social media, it's like you said, that they don't have that mastery over their mind or the ability to just tune out or reject the things that don't match without having to make it wrong, having to put more distance between themselves and that thing.